Make my own rules, play my own games. I don't give a what.
Hi, I'm Ray.
And I'm Steph.
And this is the Psychom Hotline,
where we gossip about all the cringe and exciting ways science is communicated in real life.
So let's bring the drama.
Wild and free.
Hi, Ray.
Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
I am doing good.
Should I worry?
You are fine. It was just a very big exhale. So it sounds like you're ready to talk about what you're hating on.
That reminded me of when Alex was our guest and she was saying like she could hear you go like a
oh my god
because of like your volume was some like weird or something. I can't remember.
Oh my god, that cracked me up. I just finished editing that and like all three of us talking at the same time was so fucking chaotic. I had to like try to suppress, but I'm like, oh, Ray's saying something funny, let me try to like move that up, but like you making fun of my breathing sent me.
I'm sorry that I made fun of your breathing.
It's okay. It was a funny moment. It's a funny moment.
It was a funny moment.
But yeah, but how are you? How are you feeling? You just came back from New Jersey.
I did.
Another workshop that you did.
I did. It's like my shimmy.
For the Nat Geo.
For Nat Geo at Princeton. I would say I kind of felt dumb just like walking in these campuses with all these like professors and students and everything. And their campus is definitely prettier than Northwestern. And I know I'm going to get hate on that from my Northwestern pals, but it's true. They have a much prettier campus. It just, sorry, cats. It was a good workshop. It was a storytelling workshop for National Geographic and everyone, man, so impressive. And like when you talk to people that are also like integrating, computer sciences, AI, and then human models, human communication models, and all of that is just so fascinating. And every time I go like in a university, and every time like I study, like do work with scientists, I'm just like I miss being in this space like every day. Because when you do your PhD, it's like every day.
Yes,
you feel that? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I do. I really felt the blues once I graduated. Because I was already like phased out once I entered into the PhD for like the SciComm aspect of it. Because it's like, okay, I lost lab. I lost like being a part of like a department and I'm just like working from home. And then once I graduated to like lose access to like all the opportunities, the resources, and just like having access to like people and different types of research and whatever at any given point, I'm like, I miss it. I miss it.
Yeah, I know. Same. But it was good. I'm ready to hate again.
Yeah. So what are you hating on?
So I'm reading this book by Karen Hao, Hao. And you might have seen her like on Instagram. She talks about AI, ethics, and all sorts of stuff. And this book, The Empire of AI, she talks about mostly like from like OpenAI and Sam Altman and the branching of all these other like AI companies and all of that. But I'm halfway through-ish. No, even like probably earlier. And it got to the point where there's a story of, Google had this ethics researcher, Dr. Gabru. And at the time she was, studying the ethics of AI, including like Google's work. And when she prepared this paper with her colleagues and it was supposed to go out to a conference, like from higher ups from leadership, Google was like, retract that. You're not presenting this. And then there was like all these back and forth where she was like, whoa, okay, like, can we have a conversation? And like, can we change this? Can we do this? And it was like, no, this is not, it kind of something to the effect of, this is not a negotiation.
Yeah.
Like you take this out, especially after all these things of like, oh, we're like ethical and we have like a group
we're
that
doing
is doing
things
that.
So well, Mm-hmm.
We're so different.
We're thinking about people.
We're really thinking about people.
Quote,
and
quote.
Then, quote, right. It kind of reminds me of like, a friend of mine was telling me, like when you go to like different programs, fellowships, a lot of like these kind of jobs and stuff, they like sometimes hire you for your like, ethnicity or diverse perspective and all of that. And then when you want to get inside, they're like, oh, can you put this by the door and come in?
Yeah. Yes.
That's exactly how she described it and it really stayed with me.
Mm-hmm.
So just reading that, and eventually they terminated her position, right? Like she had to leave. There was no negotiation. At some point, she says in the book, like you read it as like something like happened that she felt humiliated. And that just like really resonated with me, that because like I feel like during my professional life, there were moments that there's power dynamic and there's this sense of unfairness, and it's like it's public nature where you feel humiliated. And I wish these were situations where I would have read this and this story would have been like immediately I'd remember when she posted, like, I think it was like on her Twitter that like, you know, she was terminated and all of that. I remember the conversations like in social media, and it was a very big deal. And in the book, like they're describing how when that happened, like some organizations or conferences were like, we don't want your funding, Google. There was all this backlash for the longest time. And there was a moment where people were like, well, we don't have money and we want Google's funding. And it's like back on the same thing. And you look around and you're like, oh my God, like it feels like there are no consequences. And I wish this was a story that would have ended in like, and that was a moment. Oh my God. You know what I just noticed?
What?
The tree in front of my house is broken. The whole tree is fallen. Oh my God.
That's scary.
Jesus.
Do we need to pause?
That is. No, that happened in the past. Like I was not here when it happened. I just noticed.
Is it going to fall on your house?
No, it's neighbors. There's like a playhouse, like a children's playhouse, and this tree is on it, broken.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God. So maybe this is a good metaphor for how slowly these things change to the point of things breaking and people like literally like losing jobs and livelihoods and all of that. And you just don't realize it's like slowly happening. And the problem is, I think that a lot of them are very good at telling these stories. Like, do you remember when like there was like a defense contract and OpenAI was like, yeah, we'll like do this. And Anthropic was like, no, we're not going to do that. And everyone was cheering, was like, yeah, Claude, I'm going to move to Claude because they're doing this. And this narrative was so perfect and beautiful. And in the behind the scene, like they're all just like, there's no ethics, you know?
Yeah.
How's that? Yeah, I really hated on that.
Yeah, that is super deep. That is super deep and super real. That's intense. That's intense because it's, you know, it goes back into like our existential dystopian timeline that we're in of just like how big tech is, you know, they control everything. They just control everything. They have their hand in everything. Hand in everything. Like when you see in news articles of just like these like Anthropic leaders or ChatGPT going to the like they're with Trump in these rooms in these like international affairs. Like why are in the room in these like why do they have access to all this stuff? And it makes me think of like the article with like have you seen like the AI bubble burst? Like, so I think like Wall Street Journal or something. I forgot. I didn't read it. I never read it too, but I just remember the visual of just kind of like how they're all like funding each other. And so there was always like the short captions that I read from it. It's just kind of like, okay, is the AI bubble about to burst where they're all just like investing, but it's all the same tech, but they're all shuffling money within it. And yet they still control everything. And we always have these conversations too of just like, we want to push back into more like in-person things and not be so like chronically online. But it's hard when like all of our livelihoods are like in this internet system that these big tech giants have a hand in everything.
Right. And the moment you want to talk about environmental impact, they're like, but AI is so important. And you're like, yeah, but there's like the machine side of like things where like you have like all this, like a lot of like these discoveries made. I am very AI illiterate. So an expert is listening to this and is like, just like shaking their head. And
again,
like,
Ray and I just talking out of our butt. We don't know what we're talking about.
Yes, correct. But like a part of my understanding is like a lot of like these, like, I don't know, like protein folding and this, like that one, like the Nobel Prize and all of that. It's like very focused on like not LLMs, like the machine learning of stuff that is actually not really energy consuming because they're like more contained and all of that. It's really like mostly like a lot of these generative AIs is like, here's a picture and another picture and looking through all these databases to be able to like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the LLMs that are not actually helping us as much are the most energy consuming side of this. So you can't even justify as much the fact that like, oh yeah, there's like fantastic scientific improvement that is happening, but it doesn't have to use that much energy and resources and destroy communities and all of that.
I know that's the hard part because it's just like, okay, there's always been data centers, but now the volume of it, like my partner the other day was just like, oh, did you see that they want to build a data center in space? I'm like, why? You know, like what is like they're already taking like, you know, you see it in Utah, like all these data centers are being like built in the freaking desert that already has limited water
problem. Exactly.
Yeah. And then like back in Nashville, they want to build a data center right next to a zoo. And it's just like there's already studies of like how the sound of like the generators like have made people sick. And you're gonna put that next to freaking animals that are like already contained in this like environment.
Right.
Like, oh my God. So
yeah. Can't imagine. Can't imagine. Okay. Wellness is delightful.
That was such a very like lighthearted hate. I love the psychom of it. And that, oh man, because it's yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard to navigate because it's like, okay, so I moved to I'm in a new area. For those that are watching, I moved. I'm in Colorado. And we moved here one because we have more friends here. And also there's like a big aerospace hub here. But it's just it always goes back to like the same dystopian of problems of just like the jobs that are available are always like defense contracting. It's for these data centers, like it's for all of these things. So it's just like, oh, are we selling our soul?
Yeah.
In order just to like afford a minimal livelihood of like a comfortable livelihood. And so I always have these conversations with a lot of like my close friends of, you know, like what are we willing to sell our soul for? But then also feeling like because these giants have control over everything and not feeling enough power to like do something about it, and you still have to play into it. And how do we criticize it? I don't know.
Yeah.
It just, yeah, I don't have anything there, but
yeah, no, I feel you. I feel like there's I think it's like a Persian - Islamic saying that it's like, if you would give me the world to take a grain of rice from an ant, I don't want the world. And I'm like, if I take this grain of rice from the ant, what am I? Can you just like say it again? What am I getting?
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Like I'm starving. I need to live. I need that grain.
Right. I'm like, you give me a grain of rice and I'll take the grain of rice from the ant.
Yeah. And then I don't know. Thinking of academia, sometimes I feel like, never mind. I'm not going to go there. Yeah, I don't have any hates. Maybe let's just transition into like what we're gonna BS about in this episode. We're trying to think of ideas. We're trying to get more guests, but in the topics of looking for guests, we're wanting to talk about like hosting in general. Like what makes a good host? Because Ray and I have had some hosting experience. We have I feel like a lot of professional psychomers are hosts, or they're, you know, like everyone's a one-man band in terms of like they're a host, they're a writer, they're the researcher, they're the fact checker, they're, you know, we're all encompassing. But there's a difference between, at least myself, I'm sometimes more of the science communicator that takes the back end, but there's others that are like, okay, their whole science communication is them as a persona. And even with their last conversation with talking with Alex, we ended that podcast talking about how there is some benefits to having a parasocial relationship with host. And so I guess we'll volley off the question to Ray. Like, what do you think makes a good host?
Oh my God, what a big question. What a big, great question.
Yeah. Where should we start?
It's interesting. We'll get to that together. But as you were talking, when you were saying like, you know, people have to be all of those things, I started remembering, do you remember at some point, like there was a time where these places like New York Times, Washington Post, like their Instagrams were just like news. And now you look at a lot of their like editors, writers are the hosts as well. And like I was like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm starting to getting used to seeing these like I know this like person that does the climate change reporting, and I know this analysis and all of that. And I actually personally really appreciated it, because that's how I would consume the information. Like I would not read too much if it's a post that is like all text, but when they have their experts come on the show and talk about it, I enjoy it. And the more I see those experts, like there's one of them, oh my God, I think he even like, or him and his teams like got a Pulitzer Prize for something. And I just love his fashion. Like I think I'm thinking of the right person. I don't know their name. I don't know anything. I can't remember even the content of it. But the fact that I remember them and their fashion, and if they come up, I'll pause and listen to them,
Mhm.
is the sign that like, oh, something here is working. Even
Mhm.
if that parasocial relationship, which should be like the definition basically, is kind of like
Mhm.
when you have this relationship that you keep like seeing the same person, and then you think you feel that you know that person, you're a friend of them, you build this relationship with them, where if you're walking in the street and you see them, you're like, I know this guy. You might even say like, hey, like dude, and expect them to kind of know you. So you build these relationships. Once they do that, like I'm a more of a consumer of their content. So I kind of appreciate that. And a big part of that is parasocial relationships.
Yeah, because I literally on one of like my SciComm Slack channels, I saw someone post recently, like Nature. I think it was on Wall Street Journal. Let me see. Oh yeah, Nature posted about Nature,
Uh-huh.
starting their TikTok initiative, which
Okay.
our friend Marin Hunsberger is
Yes.
spearheading. And
Yes.
so like the title of this is like the future science communication is not an article like this. And so it's essentially just them hard launching their efforts to start their science communication. But I've noticed that a lot, even with like Scientific America, have started like now hiring like science writers who are also host. And when I was a mass media fellow, one of the fellows in my cohort, he ended up going to, I think it was Boston or Baltimore. Boston or Baltimore, I think Baltimore, but he ended up becoming a science reporter. But he launched their TikTok and getting so many views, but it's just like, oh, I see him. I love his
Right.
charisma, love his reporting, love the on the scene, like boots in the ground kind of aspect of it. But I see that at the same time, I was applying to another job that was similar, that would have been like working for a news reporting group, and they were looking for like a content manager. And I looked at their social media, and some of the reporters were doing it, but like some people got it and some people don't, you know?
Ooh, wait, tell me more. Tell me about the like. Yeah. Separate from me.
I don't know. I guess I've
Like, what would give you the ick for the host?
I don't know. Maybe it's not the ick. I think there's a difference. If I want, okay, and maybe the line comes into like, who would I, like what you mentioned earlier of like, you see this person on your feed, he has great fashion, it makes you stop every single time. Whereas sometimes people that don't have the right presence, then I'm like, okay, they're just doing their job. It's just presented as a matter of fact. Maybe I'll stay to listen if the content is like important enough. But I'm not gonna go out of my way to like follow them, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Right.
So I think so like when I think of a great host, I think it's always subjective too, because there's people like when we think of YouTube, there are so many people that want to be YouTubers. So many people are vlogging. So many people are trying to be the next it factor or whatever. But people that like pop off have like an it factor that like allows them to be viral. And so I wonder if there's like I don't know if we can think of this as like, have you ever heard of like an S tier? You ever seen like
No.
the I've seen a lot of Twitch live streamers do this where it's like the S tier is like superior, and then it's like A,
Uh-huh.
B, C, D, E, F, and you just rank things.
Right.
So I wonder
Right.
what would be our version. Like, what is our S tier version of like
Right.
hosting? And
Ah, I love that. I
yeah,
also think it's so subjective, because as
for
you were
sure.
when you were was I was like thinking of like, yeah, like what is like good hosting for me. A lot of the hosts that came to mind were people that were kind of funny, right? Like
Same,
I think of
same.
like right, yeah, like we have that in common where we enjoy that. So if you think of like the Black Forager or our friend Marin, like Marin is hilarious. And
Mhm.
even when Marin's like talking about something kind of serious, or Maddie Sophia, who used to be at NPR. There are people that like can talk about very serious thing and then drop all these like funny moments, and the funny is not like pushy. It's still like very authentic. I'm like, I know this is Marin's sense of humor. I know this is
Yes.
Maddie's sense of humor. And it really, on one hand, it signals that authenticity and the fact that you're like, I'm going to risk it and I'm going to talk about something very serious and I'm going to drop something very silly. And at the same time, I think my brain needs those like breathing spaces as I'm getting information. I'm like, okay, I need a moment. And the moment is a joke.
Yeah. Because so like people that I look up to that I think will be like on my S tier would be Raleigh, who is the host of Climate Town on YouTube. And because of his humor, but he has built a team where like they used to be writers for, oh my God, like the Daily Show. They used to be writer for the Daily Show, like all these like political / humor type shows. He has that same type of writer, I think, helping him with his Climate Town stuff. And so like, again, like his humor is hilarious. I love him. And then another thing with like what draws me to like women host is like, authenticity and like quirkiness. And I feel like quirkiness can be either too quirky. Like, I don't know. I saw something the other day that cracked me up where someone made a reel that was like millennial core, but it's just like a bunch of like, oh man, I don't know how to describe this without being like super offensive, but it's like a bunch of like white women, quirky girls that are just like, oh my God, like I just like, I'm so clumsy and like making weird faces and stuff like that. And so people are like, okay, of course, like that's for sure cringe. And like growing up, they for sure would have been like outcasts and whatever. They for sure would have been outcasts. But then it flashed me back to, I was doing a panel for mass media and one of the audience members like asked a question to Joe Palca and myself, if they're just like, hey, did you do any like training to be like hosting? Like, how did you guys practice like having a good voice? And now when we're both just kind of like, this is just our voice. Like we didn't do anything. But I remember saying about myself, I'm just like, oh, like sometimes I come off with like being quirky. And I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe that I described myself as being quirky. Like when I reflect on that moment, I have like a full body cringe of just like, I cannot believe I just did that. But but it still makes me think of that. Like even with a panel that you and I did too for Evelyn. And you, Ray, you're like, I think I'm funny.
I think I came with a caveat. I was like, I think.
I know.
There are friends.
But still, again, it's like subjective.
No, I don't think
but
that's true.
No, we're silly, goofy girls or whatever. But we're not like, I don't think we're cringe quirky. But we are like, no. I don't know. I think quirky comes to like women who like who are very like, who don't care too much about how they come across, and they do have like a sense of humor. I've just been rambling for a lot, but anyways.
No, I'm listening because
then I also think of like Simone Yetch, who's also like,
God, I love her.
She branded herself as like a shitty robot person, and now she's stepped into more of like wanting to be taken seriously. But even all the interviews that you see with her, she is still a quirky girl.
Yeah. I love her. It's interesting because I think there's something about quirkiness that comes, it's like a type of vulnerability, right? You're like, I'm going to try being a little weird. And I think an inevitable part of that is that at times you would be cringe. I have zero doubt. And I remember vividly like times when I was cringy. And every time I think of those moments, I just want to like die.
Yeah.
I even have like a part of like my workshop at Nat Geo is like I show my really old TEDx talk where I like mess up at times to be like, look, it's okay. People mess up and recover. But that part is not the part I cringe about. The part I cringe about is just like how I talk. I'm like, and the sun is our mutual ground that brings us all together. And like, shut the fuck up, Ray. Shut the fuck up.
Trying to be deep.
It's also kind of funny because I was trying to be like very deep with that moment. And that's where I like mispronounced the sun as like the Sean Connery. So that's the part like I also show. but like the amount of cringe and all of that. I'm also, one of the things I think about is, I know especially like there's all these conversations about like Gen Z and the new generation is like very worried about being cringe. And we were cringe, except for, especially as we were growing up, there was like no one was recording our cringe. It was not documented anywhere. So you get to experiment by being cringe, and you experiment the boundaries of your funny, of your quirky, of your weird, of your cool. You know what I mean? All of that kind of stuff. And I do worry like what happens when all of your cringe and experimentation is recorded, so you feel less confident doing all of that. I think we got lucky that by the time we are being recorded and live all the time, we figured out some of our quirkiness, and we even within that we still have so much cringe and like fuck ups. So imagine if you would have seen like 17-old Rey trying all of that. Okay, so what are your thoughts on hosts? Hosts are kind of like proxies for audiences, right?
Yes.
And on like especially topics that are more complicated. And there are hosts that are very good at like really removing themselves and like bringing guests and asking questions. And then you have hosts, like I think of like Trevor Noah, that every time he brings someone, and if it's not like 60% him talking, 40% the guest, is at least like 50-50. So he's not only the proxy, but the proxy is not just a question. It's also like, here's what I understand, and here's my experiences, and here's what you have to say. What are your feelings on that?
Yeah, I think, okay, so maybe this goes back into like the different roles that the host can play. So like what we mentioned before, there are a host, like for the other ones that we've described, or like social media. They're the ones that are usually, if they're not the main writer, like they're a writer host. Then I think with Trevor Noah, then there's this like the host interviewee. I think that's more like podcast realm, like podcast talk show hosting. Because I think the art of being a good interviewer is different than like the art of like entertaining. Man, like interviewing, writing a good interview takes skill. It makes me always think of how, I don't know if you watch Hot Ones on YouTube, where like every celebrity guest that goes on there is always like, complimenting. Exactly. Right. They're always complimenting Sean Evans of just like, wow, you really did your research, or like, wow, like no one's ever asked me this before. Right. And so that compliments Sean's ability to like, he would read all their memoirs or like whatever book is out, or he probably gets advances of like whatever movies that they're doing, but he'll listen to like he does his research to prepare and try to ask questions that are not always common that you see these celebrities going during their press junket. So I'm like taking that into the SciComm space. Like I think of our friend Regina, who is an NPR host on Shortwave. She's like not the main host, but she's like the science correspondent on there. And Regina also brings a level of quirkiness into her interviews. Yeah. She brings in humility in terms of like, she's an expert, but she also knows she is not an expertise in everything, and that the scientist that they're interviewing is the subject matter expert that they're attaining to. And also the attributes to her good writing and researching in order to ask the questions in order to make a really good shortwave story, because I love listening to shortwave. Like their stories are really good, and it doesn't feel like they're taking over or overstepping or over explaining the researcher, and they give the space for the researcher to explain what the science that they're talking about.
Right. And I think a big part of that is also they probably know their audience really well. Like I feel like if someone listens to shortwave, it's a daily science. I mean, it's a very routine. So if you listen to that, you're probably someone that is into science. You're more familiar with some of these topics. So if this like radio program was supposed to be like a one-time thing for a community that might have not been at all familiar with a lot of like scientific stuff, as a host, maybe you step in more, you explain things more, but also credit to them knowing their audience really well to know like this would be too much explanation for this audience as well.
And also credit to like, when you think of podcasting, because you don't see them, you're listening to them. They're not a video podcast. Like voice and tone of voice really matter. So like the main shortwave host, I don't remember her name. I'm so sorry.
Emily Kwan?
Yes. Okay. Emily has like a very like her voice carries empathy. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's very soothing and it's very welcoming, and it's not nurturing in like a derogatory way, but it's very, yeah, it's a friendly welcome. And I think that allows the listener, yeah, to be welcomed into her space, to go on the journey with her. And because of her like soothing and warm voice, she's able to have like deeper storytelling with her audience, like audio first interview style, versus like, you know, some non-science podcasts that I listen to are always gossip podcasts. And so like, so one of them are like these two best friends who are both from Miami. They are so freaking chaotic, but I feel not represented, but I am able to relate to them because they're both like first generation Latinas. And so they're like me, where like they're very whitewashed, but they still like their family talks to them in Spanish, but they respond in English. And just like the humor of like growing up in Florida and just how chaotic and all over the place he is. But the one of the hosts on that gossip podcast is also has like another gossip podcast, but they gossip about like TikTok news, but my husband will like talk crap about them. He's like, "Oh, are you listening to the bitches again?" Because all they do is just like bitch the entire time. But when you look at their comments, they have like a really small integrated or involved and engaged community that are also like other complainers, gossipers that like to like listen to this chaos. So yeah, I guess like it really comes, you know, talking about like the subjectivity, it's just like what I look for in a host personally is always like, can I be friends with them? And I think that's what feeds into like the parasocial relationship. But I don't always think that in terms of when I think of like Joss Fong from Howtown, Joss Fong doesn't come across to me as a quirky woman. She comes off to be as like, this is a very professional woman who is deep diving me into a topic that I don't know anything about. Very like soothing voice and soothing presence, but she still takes up space. And so then she's like one of those women where I'm just like, oh, I like envy her like professionalism and storytelling and just like her craftsmanship in what she has built. I will never like, she's too cool for me. I'm never going to be able to be friends with her, but I respect that. But then this is going to be a hot topic. But like when I think of Cleo Abrams, I no longer like her stuff anymore. And I don't know.
Who's Cleo Abrams?
Cleo Abrams, she's also part of the Vox ecosystem that went into starting her own YouTube channel, science YouTube channel called Huge If True. And her stuff blew up. Like her work blew up. But and yeah, like even her show now, there's a lot of YouTubers that are trying to run for Emmys. And so she's one of those YouTubers that have been putting campaigns of like for your consideration. But
I remember her face. 8.2 million on YouTube.
I know, dude. She grew that in like within like 3 years or something like that.
Wow.
What at first attracted me to her is that like, okay, most of the hard-hitting YouTubers that have been great, successful hosts have been predominantly men. You know, it's like the Derek Mueller, the Dustin Sandlin, like Mark Rober, of just like the neighborhood guy that just like, I don't know, never mind. But they each have their own course. So like Derek Mueller, when you think of him as a host, he's almost kind of like, I'll put him in the same tier as like Joss Fong. Like he's not a quirky man. He's just there to deliver the news. He has a tone of professionalism that you respect. And he does a really good storytelling and research in order to like give the information as fact. Versus like Destin Sandlin from Smart Everyday poses himself as just like, hey, I'm just your regular neighbor guy who does engineering. I have very strong moral values, family first, but I'm really interested in this thing. I'm going to figure it out and I'm taking you with me. And then we have the Mark Rober who is just like, I'm going to blow this thing up and well, this is engineering, you know? So each of them have their quirks not quirks, but each of them have their different personality.
Yeah.
But with Cleo Abrams was able to like disrupt that pattern of just like, here's another person who comes from the Vox ecosystem. So she has that credibility with her of just like, okay, she's part of like a well-researched institution. She's bringing that storytelling. And, but then at the same time, she's like, she's not as quirky as Simone yet, but her enthusiasm is what people get excited about.
Right.
And when in my opinion, what also dictates a really good host is people whose like natural enthusiasm for a topic comes across. So that's where I go into like Alex Danis, even like Tina Lasisi, when I was recruiting her to be the host of Why Am I Like This when I produced that show. Just meeting her as a person, I'm like, oh my God, like Tina loves science. Like she loves to talk about science. And so that naturally comes across when they're being host on shows compared to like some other people that I've tried to recruit or get to audition for talking about science.
Yeah. Yeah. This makes me wonder, there are hosts. So there are people like David McRaney, right? He has like Smarter Every Day, or like Shankar Vedantam with like, oh my God, he's like NPR thing. I forgot.
Wait, who's David McRaney?
David McRaney, he wrote this book, Why Am I Like This? He had his podcast, not Why Am I Like This Is You, Smarter Every Day. And he was interviewing a lot of social scientists. He was one of the first people that I listened to that I was like, oh my God, he's talking about the science of science communication and the science of communication. Mm-hmm. And he was bringing this like fantastic host. And then he recently wrote a book, How Minds Change. And it's a fantastic book. It's like very story based, talking about like why people continue believing in the things they do and conspiracy theories. And then he goes to the science of it. And eventually, like, how can you change people? He's also just like a lovely human being too. But like when I listen to him, right, like he is like we don't have anything like demographically, let's say, like in common. He's also like not the typical, like the quirky, funny podcaster. He's like very serious, like very warm, but like very serious. And I do wonder something like that, or like with Shankar Vedantam, that is like also has like a very soothing voice. And he also talks a lot about like the science of like social sciences. For me with those, like, because I'm so invested in the topic, I'm thinking a little less about like, am I like the host, or how much can I relate to them and stuff like that, versus if that would have been, and I don't know, this is more of a question. And if it's a topic that I actually don't actively seek, then I'm a little more like, I think I'm looking more into like, is the host like funny? Are they entertaining me in other ways? Because if the content is not 100% entertaining for me, then they should bring more of that entertainment. Because I'm thinking of like other podcasts that I'm not gonna name, that where with the host name them. There's like a lot of different podcasts that I'm like, I am not like 100% into like this host, but because the content is so interesting, it doesn't matter, right? Yeah. Then you have like ones like David McRaney, where he's like a very like interesting, amazing host. The content is also good. It's great. But then there would be like other podcasts where I'm like not 100% about the content. I'm like, the host needs to take me in. And if the hosts are like funny and engaging and tell good stories and like keep me entertained in the background, then like, I'm like, yeah, that's, I need more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that made me think of, so my algorithm feeds me a lot of things because I'm interested in a lot of stuff on YouTube specifically. But I got hosted one where maybe because I was moving, I've been finding a lot of like how to make your space more like X, Y, and Z. And so there's this channel that got recommended to me. It's called Speed with like 3 E's. And it was just a dude. It was just a dude to be like, this is a video for other dudes of like how to make your space feel more homey without like being into like the typical stereotype of like what a bachelor pad looks like, which is like a mattress, no headboard, blue sheets, crappy curtains, shower not cleaned, So it was literally just like a typical YouTube in that sense. But this host was so I don't know, so engaging that I like followed his channel, and now I'm subscribed to a channel about cars. And then I have so I end up deep diving into this dude, and just like once I like somebody, I start watching like all their old content. But he gives like big brother energy that, and is very, for to see like a man show a level of like vulnerability and like humility was also like super refreshing, of just like, okay, another millennial white dude that I'm just like following, but he's just kind of like, he gives like very love and endearing vibes when he talks, and I like loved that and respected that. So now I'm like watching him like, I just updated this like 1974 like Subaru, and this is how you change your transmission. Like, I have nothing to do with the topic, but I totally followed just because of like the vibe of the host. And so
Right.
I when thinking to like other SciComm hosts that like maybe I'm not like super interested in the topic, but they're just like so good at like bringing the viewer in, that I'm like, okay, I can rock with you. Like, I'll follow. I don't care about this topic, but I'm just going to follow because I like you.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I feel like there is someone like that.
Right. Well, you know what is scary to me is that when you have hosts that you like so much and you start building that like parasocial relationship, I feel like also like the downfall is like heavier too and stronger. Like, I feel like it's kind of like if your best friend like lies to you and you're like, I trusted you.
Yes.
Versus like a random person. And I'm thinking of, so for example, and this might be a little bit of a different example, but Neil deGrasse Tyson was like one of the reasons I got like so interested in science communication. Like, I watched like all the new Cosmoses, like when I was in Iran. I listened religiously to Star Talk Radio, was their podcast. And it's just like, I remember like even when I wrote like my PhD like statement of purpose SOP, like Cosmos was something that I brought up as things that like inspired me and all of that.
You're a ride or die.
I was just like, I was like, and he is very good at like getting people like interested, not necessarily in the education part of science, but like he's a good communicator, not just educator, I believe. And then when you started like hearing a lot of like this news and stuff came out about like him being like inappropriate with his interns and all of that, and like you hear other stories, and then suddenly you're like, dude, I trusted you. You feel so betrayed that now I cannot listen to Star Talk Radio.
Yeah.
Every time he posts something or he does it, I'm like, I can't. I'm still mad. I still feel betrayed.
No, that's literally true, because that happens with like a lot of these big YouTubers where like I looked up to them, but then once you learn to like work with them or hear how they like work with some of these cases, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to ride with you. I'm not going to vibe with you. Even though I never did anything. I think maybe that's a little bit different because there is like 1 degree of separation now between like me and some of these people. But that happens a lot on social media, especially of just like me being chronically online with a lot of influencers who had to make like an apology video, especially during the election season, where like a lot of people, like this person came across as like one way, but then you end up finding out their political affiliation. So then a lot of those viewers feel like betrayed. And then there's like a mob of just like, cancel this person, or like, I'm no, like it makes me think of Sydney Sweeney, for example. Like, she was the hot it girl from Euphoria, but then once everyone found out that she's like Republican, like literally no one, but like, when you see
there
stuff
was a
pop up,
divide.
there's a divide. And once you see stuff pop up on her, when you look at the comments, they're now nasty of just like, oh, I'm not gonna mess with this MAGA Barbie or whatever, you know, like mean ass stuff that they say. But it really does change. It really does change the perception. So they're now thinking of like the creator side. When I think of like other creators who have like vocalized of just like, okay, where the boundaries lie of like, we not take advantage, but again, everyone knows the value of having parasocial relationships because that's how you grow your following. We have the cost of like oversharing. And so like some creators kind of like monetize their vulnerability to the point that they no longer have privacy. So then when something does when they do an action that doesn't align with what their viewers might have done, then that's where scrutiny comes in. And then it takes a long time to rebuild that trust of just like, okay, was your apology video authentic enough? Was your apology video sincere enough? Like, did you actually learn and take accountability, or are you just saying these words and whatnot? And so I feel like I see that more with more like lifestyle creators and hosts. But with the SciComm space, I think what helps is because we are reporting about science, we're still bringing, these hosts are still bringing themselves in terms of like their personality and their quirks, but there's still a professionalism layer there of just like they're either representing this specific field of science or this specific news outlet, and there is like safety net of like having that bigger brand or that science to be the main brand rather than like them and their personal lives to kind of help with at least creating boundaries of parasocial relationships.
Yeah. Or even with like if you have like as a person, there's like so much vulnerability that you're bringing in, but if your topic is science, it's always like there's a lot of that happening in the middle, so you don't have to like overwhelm it with your personal life sometimes, because you can be like, my personal life might be more like a proxy to create interest and entertainment and joy or relatability or empathy, or to it's a lot of trust building element to show you that I'm like, we have mutual values and all of that. But I don't have to make like 1 hour just about me. I don't have to like grab onto all these personal things. I could be like, here's a little bit of me, and I will have all this science that I could talk about too. And I think that kind of helps.
Yeah. Are there any hosts? You don't have to name names, but I guess are there any hosts where like, I know I mentioned earlier, it's just like, there's some people that I'm like, I want to give you a shot, but man, I just can't, like, you're too boring for me, or like you're trying too hard. Like what sets someone into like the S tier, A tier rather than just kind of like mid?
Yeah. S tier is definitely a combination of host and topic. Like I don't think if it's a topic that I'm not interested in and they're a fantastic host, it's gonna go that far up. It's usually what goes up is a host that I feel that they're very comfortable in their skin talking, where I don't feel like, even if it's scripted, it doesn't feel scripted, and they feel comfortable going off script. So for example, when I look at The Daily Show, there's a lot of different hosts. And sometimes I'm like, a lot of them, it feels very scripted. And then when Jon Stewart comes, it's like, I'm like, oh my God, is he improving? Is this written? I don't know. It might be, but I can't tell. And he has all these moments that feel so real, and he's comfortable in his skin and all of that. And obviously it comes from experience as well. But I think it's a combination of like that. And I think enjoy more, hosts that bring their own personal opinion in more. They kind of analyze things. That's why I really like Trevor Noah. When people like give you a little more of that like analysis. What else? And then within those, again, like I have categories like very funny hosts that I enjoy. Like the first podcast I've ever heard like in my life was, I think, How Stuff Works, where it was Josh and oh my God, I forgot his name. Josh and I can't remember the co-host name. But I loved it. I listened to them for years. This was like a billion years ago, the first podcast I listened to. To me, it was interesting because Chuck. Yes. Yeah. Chuck, Josh and Chuck. And they were very funny. They were very quirky. They would just like ramble on about random things in the middle of their podcast as they were talking about how cheese works. And at the same time, again, like I have people like, I think of like Shankar Vedantam or like David McRaney that don't have like that much of like the quirky, funny side, but they also have like very soothing voices that takes you step by step into this like complicated social science topics. And like that is the other genre of like my interest. And then the way it goes down, I think, and I don't want to say like goes down. It's more like that they are up, not that
your
the other
preferences.
People are down.
Yeah.
Right. I think it ends up being the more I listen to someone, that also helps. It's like there's a song, you're like, it's a fine song, but then you keep listening to it, you're like, this is a fantastic song. So like
Mhm.
I have a Kindle podcast that I listened to, and maybe the first 2 episodes I was like, okay, I'm interested in the topic. But like I'm starting to learn a little about like the host too, like Hero,
Mhm,
and I know
mhm.
he has back pain and he has asthma and he's
Mhm.
driving to work, and today work is like this. So sorry about the background noise. So you start like being like, okay, I'm getting a little bit of your life. So some of it is like, if you get lucky and someone is persistent enough to listen to you, they just
Mhm.
grow to like you as a host because now they know you. So it's not
Yeah.
sometimes about the host, it's like you're a random person. You get to see them a lot and you're like, you know what, I actually kind of like you. And I
Yeah.
never thought I would.
Yeah.
So that might be another thing.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of just like, okay, like Scientific America on their Instagram page, like there are different types of like journalists that are presenting, but I think there is because it's more topic first. You can see how some journalists will bring in their creativity or their personality into it, and I think that what can differentiate between like, okay, this is just like a straightforward reporting, and then versus like, okay, I would, if I'm scrolling and I'm seeing this person pop up, I'm going to stop to listen because I like their quirkiness.
Right.
So I guess like maybe if we were to, we just been talking about all these different likes and it's just all of our own preferences. But like for those that are like wanting to get into hosting and wanting to like dabble into like being, scientists that want to be more in front of the camera, like what would be some good tips to kind of like get them camera ready? Because it's hard, because like, again, everyone's going to have their own opinion. Everyone is going to say what they like and what they don't like about a person. Like you're always going to be judged. You're always going to be
Right.
judged.
Right.
But what, like what can help someone come across more personable to higher the chances of having a reoccurring listener or follower?
Yeah. I'm like, as we were talking, I'm also kind of like scrolling through my Instagram.
Yeah, because I'm
people
like,
that
who you
following.
texting, girl? Why aren't you paying attention to me?
No. I'm listening. I'm looking at through my following list. I think so. One of the things that helped me when we were recording Sciencing Out for PBS Nova, and I had Ana Aceves and Arlo Perez there, and the two of them, and one of our friends, like like another like Nova person, Tanija Hamilton, was there, and there was something about having a group of your friends around you, and they are funny, and we were joking, and like cuts, we would just like continue filming. We were not like 100% the script. We were also like recording like mini bits and pieces of things. There's something about who's around you and is recording with you. And I think that's why like it really matters who's the producer. It really matters who's the director.
Yes.
So being surrounded by people that like help you be comfortable, like even be like, okay, so you recorded that. Now, can you leave the script? How would you say it? Or like, now I'm your friend. How would you say it? Or like, how would you? And then like record a bunch of stuff that you're not going to use, but it's going to help that person loosen up. So I would just say really, really, really makes a difference who's with you as you're recording.
Yeah. Like it makes me think of like, another PBS producer that I met through some of like the PBS producer conferences. She's a Latina producer, and she was producing a show specifically about like money for a Latino audience. But she had a non-Hispanic person like as a director who came in with like not having cultural, what's the word? Cultural
awareness,
what's the word?
Knowledge.
Yeah, cultural awareness, cultural sensitivity, and just like, and it came off as just like disrespectful that it made her, when she was hosting, like not even feel comfortable enough to host her own show that she wrote and was proud about. So she had to like explicitly be like, I need a Latino director or a Latino person in this place with me in order for me to come off as like authentically myself.
Yeah.
And like, it makes me think of like when we produce like Why Am I Like This, of like, okay, that was Tina's first time ever hosting. No, it wasn't the first time. That's a lie. But this is like a bigger project that she's taking on. But we did a show with friends. And so it made producing it feel a lot more relaxed, that like she can come off as herself. even though it was like a scripted show. And so I think that's very valuable to show, because there's other podcasts that I've like been guest of where, you know, there's always the running joke, like not everyone needs a podcast. Like right now, we don't need a podcast. We're just
we don't
literally
need a
talking shit.
podcast.
There's only 40 of you that are listening, but you know, we're just doing this as a creative outlet. But I think there are true people that I'm like, oh my gosh, I left the interview being like, they did not do their homework. They barely even like, I am so online. If you just went on my website, you could have found plenty of information. And they were disengaged with like how they interviewed me. And oh my God, I just I left like mad. I left the interview mad. And so for those that are like wanting, I guess like another tip of just like, okay, like who is in the room around you to make you more comfortable, like what you mentioned. I think again, it's like doing your homework, doing your research, because even if you're a host slash writer, when you become more familiar with the material, then you're able to come off less rehearsed and more of just like a friend giving you this information. But if you're the one if you're thinking about starting an interview style type podcast where you don't have a co-host, it's just you and then the audience member, just like make sure you're doing your homework. Because that comes across when you don't. You're wasting this person's time, because not everyone is doing these podcasting, like podcasting it, like no one's getting paid to be a podcast guest.
Two things come to mind. One is how much your co-producer, co-host, whatever gives you the ability to be you, because we're constantly trying to push boundaries, right? Like if you try to be authentic and vulnerable, it means you're doing something that it's harder to do, or you haven't done it as much. And I remember when I was preparing a talk for National Geographic, I wanted to put a fart story in there. And I was working with Greg McGroup, who is an amazing person. He also like produces and prepares a lot of explorers for their stories. And I'm like, this is a Nat Geo stage. Like, can I just talk about these things? So I didn't ask. As I was talking to Greg, and I was like, just dropping these different stories that I could tell a talk about. Somehow, like in the middle, I was like, oh yeah. And then I did this like fart post about this. And then he was like, Ray, did you just say fart? And I said, yes. And he was like, tell me more about this. And as we talked, I was like, I can talk about it. And he was like, yeah, let's bring it up. But also, so one, like getting the permission from him, you know what I mean? To like be myself, but also for him to be like, okay, like at some point, this is a talk about farts and that's not the topic. At some point, we're going to find like what the balance is. So he was so helpful in helping me bring a little bit of myself without losing the topic, you know what I mean? So that was one thing. And then on the other side, like that's like the person that's like behind the scene. You know who my S is?
Who?
Amy Poehler. Good hand.
Yes.
I'm so jealous of her.
Yes.
This podcast.
Oh my God. I can
so
literally
good.
go a whole hour just talking about
I
Amy
hate
Poehler.
on this podcast all the time.
Same.
Girl.
There is an episode with her and she's been having like great, again, it's another celebrity podcast. You kind of like eye roll. But what I love about Amy Poehler, and I think what I saw another Instagram commentator do like a small little like video essay of like why Amy Poehler's podcast is working. And most of it is because of like her improving skills. Like her improving skills allows her to be a really great listener and and her guest. And she's always like matching, like thinking about our kendo, our martial arts episode of just like matching the energy that the person is bringing. But also because like Amy Poehler already has a reputation of being like a super funny woman. They're coming in as like peers, but also like a level of respect of just like Amy is great at her craft. And I'm also a fan of Amy. And Amy's also a fan of like the person that's coming onto the scene. But after watching her podcast, I got like a free trial for a masterclass and did like her masterclass, which was like, 10 rules of like improv that can like help you on just like a day-to-day basis. But it's just like Amy's Poehler ability to play, to just like, and how her improving skills allows her to just, just volley well and still allow the guest to steer the ship, but she's still in control of the conversation.
Right. She's prepared enough to know that these are the questions that I'm asking, but I think she's comfortable enough with all of that to be able to really be in the moment. And I think
Yes.
I have been on podcasts and places that was hosted, and I'm like, oh, the host is asking me questions to go through a series of questions
Yes.
rather than hearing me and figuring
Yes.
out how can I respond to that and like knit that into something else. And when the host is not there, it really shows. I'm like, you need to be with me.
Yes.
And I think Amy Poehler is very present, very mindful, very demure in that moment.
And also playing to what you just mentioned earlier of like, she has created a work environment where like you can hear her producers laughing in the background.
Yeah.
So she's already comfortable in her own space. She has people that are comfortable and allow her to show up as her true self. And then yeah, like what you're saying, like you can tell that she is present in it, because there's other interviews that I've seen that when you do tell that they're just hitting their questions, the response is just like, oh, cool. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so here's this next question. And it's just like, okay, like now I'm just like, this is just like, yeah, again, like I'm just answering a questions of just like, this could have been like a long Q&A essay that we could have just like done an email through.
Yeah. That's honestly, that's one of my like pet peeves of like hosting, not just say like including like on panels. Like you as a panel moderator, you are the weaver of this story. So you have to be very present. And that's one of my biggest fears as well. Like as I'm like moderating conversation, I moderated a conversation with Catherine Hayhoe for like, it was like the JFK library. And my biggest fear was that I had like these questions, but also like she's talking. And I think very, very early on, like I even brought it up. I was like, what you were saying in your book is about being present in the moment and listening. So I'm putting this like out there right now that this is going to be my first goal. So I might not hit all my questions, but like what you get out of this is that, or not what you get out of this, like what you will know that's happening in this conversation is like, I'm going to be very present. I'm going to listen and I'm going to respond and have the conversation based on this, not like what I have written. And it's one of my biggest fears, because like we're humans, like we space out. Especially if you're talking to someone where like they are like getting monotone or you're tired. Or
sometimes you're like reading it in advance to make sure you're staying on time, that you're like, dang, I'm like tuning you out as I'm like trying to find my place in my next question
and
that
the
I'm going to ask you.
fear I have experienced where I'm like, oh my God, I was spaced out. I did not listen to this. And then I see myself becoming that person where I'm like, wow, that was so interesting, which makes me think of my next note. So I have to bullshit my way into like, look, I'm weaving this. But like deep inside, I'm like, you fucked up. Right? Like which will happen.
Yes.
It's just like, finding the balance.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, Stephanie, like land this plane.
I think, I guess just to finish it off of how, we said, at least Ray and I have given a lot of examples of like who we think are really great tiers and what we look for in terms of hosting. But like we mentioned in the beginning of having to experiment, and there has to be a level of cringe with it. So we're not saying this to like dissuade you from wanting to become a host, but just experiment with like putting yourself out there, not being afraid to be silly, not being afraid to show up as yourself. You're going to find what your boundaries are. Those boundaries are going to change depending on, is this self-funded or funded by somebody else or whatever the topic is. But at the same time of just, embracing the cringe, even if you end up in a real montage about being a millennial cringe, don't worry about it.
Yes. And and I would add that this is a community effort. So the way you can be cringe and your friend can be cringe is that if we all support cringe as a community. And I feel like some of that is like your friend puts a cringe video out there, go comment and say, this is fantastic. And if someone says, this is cringy, you'll be like, yeah, and I love it. Like I dig cringe. That's what I want. So I do think it's more like a community cringe support network.
Yeah. So we'll support you as you put yourself out there, as you supported us with our random ramble of an episode, but we appreciate you being here, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye. Bye.
Make my own rules, play my own games. I don't give a what you say or think or do. The way you live your life is